Hello everyone, Ron here from L.T.L Tutoring Central, and this week I'm talking about self-study tips for students preparing for the IELTS exam. However, these tips will work for anyone trying to learn English, and in a sense they will work for anyone trying to learn anything. They're very good self-study tips. The first one is read all about it, and that means find some texts and start reading. One of the best ways to learn anything is to read, and for the IELTS exam, I would recommend reading a variety of material. That will introduce you to different vocabulary, different types of sentence structure, and that can be very helpful. You can use sites like commonlit.org or ReadWorks, but really there are a lot of sites online that you can find small texts. I would suggest reading short texts so that you can read many of them over a period of time and practice your English skills and practice using the other tips that I'm going to be talking about in a moment. Now, if you have a favorite site, let me know. If you're watching on YouTube, you can tell us about your favorite site below, because everyone's always looking for new material. But there's lots of material online, so you won't have any problem finding texts to read. The second tip is to take notes or make notes. As you're reading, jot down some notes. Now, students will do this in different ways. I would suggest, if you're reading a relatively short text, to read through the text once and then go back and read again and start taking notes. That way you'll have an overview, and if this was a longer article or a textbook, I would suggest reading the headings and titles and subheadings first. But because I'm recommending reading shorter text like you would find on CommonLit or ReadWorks or one of those sites, you might just want to read through it first and then reread it and take some notes as you go through the text again. Try to put the notes in your own words. Obviously, you can do some copying from the story or from the text, but you also want to write things out in your own way, because when you're writing for the test, you will actually have to formulate your own sentences. So it's good practice to copy, but it's also good practice to take some notes in your own words. You could also copy out notes and then turn those into your own words as well. So there are several ways that you can go about this. And sometimes if it's a longer text or story, I would recommend reading 2 or 3 paragraphs and then take your notes so that you don't get bogged down by too much material all at once. But just make sure to make some notes. The next tip is to summarize or write down some comments. And you might say, well, how is that different than taking notes? Well, there is a similarity, but there's also some differences. So when you're summarizing or when you're making comments, you're taking notes on your notes. So to summarize, it means you're looking at all of your notes and you're trying to put everything together in a holistic way so that you understand the whole, so to speak, as well as the details. And your comments are what you feel about whatever text you're reading. So that is a little bit different than notes. They can be the same, because sometimes when you're taking notes, you might be making comments at the same time. That's what I do often. But it's also good just to step back and make sure that you're able to summarize the material and that you're able to think about it in a different way rather than just strictly from the notes that you took either directly from the text or hopefully in your own words from the text. Then you want to talk about the topic, and you could talk about the topic with a friend or a colleague or a relative if they're interested in listening. But I have made videos and blogs before about talking to yourself, and it's nothing to be afraid of. It's a very good learning technique. So you can, in fact, pretend to give a presentation and talk about the topic, or you can talk to your lamp or your wall or whatever, but you can just talk about it. It's good to talk out loud and listen to what you're saying. Does what you're saying make sense? Does what you're saying cover the topic well? Does it explain things in a way that someone would understand? So it's just a little bit more practice in using the English language, because remember, you're reading, you're writing now because you're taking notes, and you're summarizing. So there's the writing piece. And now this is a part of the talking piece. So you're talking it out. The previous tip was about talking about the topic, and you can go one step further and you can record yourself. You can make an audio recording or a video recording, which will include audio, I presume. And in this way, you practice even more. And of course, you can use this as a method if you're talking to the camera, whether you're using your cell phone or other device or your computer, as I am today. You can look at the camera and you can pretend that you're giving a presentation or talking to someone, because in a sense, you are. So that's another step in the talk about it and using English in speaking terms. Once you've made your audio recording or your video recording, it's very important to listen or to watch your recording, because you want to see how you're doing and you want to hear how you're doing. And it's very important. This can be really helpful. And today it's so easy to make recordings that there's no reason to skip this step. So I would strongly suggest making the recordings and then watching the recordings back. In all cases, in all areas of practice, you want to find and correct mistakes. So it doesn't matter whether it's in your written work, in your notes, in your talking, and that would be mostly listening back to your audio or looking at your video recordings. You want to look for mistakes. This isn't always easy because we prefer not to look at our mistakes, but it's a very good way of correcting them before you're actually going to be doing the IELTS test or any other kind of writing. If you're writing an essay for some reason, or a presentation or a speech, it's good to practice ahead of time. And the practice includes looking for mistakes that you're making, and then you can correct them before you get to the final product. Remember, they're not really mistakes until the test is taken or the paper's handed in, because you still have time to proofread, you still have time to make corrections. So it's always good to look back at what we've done and make sure that we try to find our errors and correct our errors, and then practice again. And that gets us to the next and last step, which is to keep at it. Don't just do this once, but keep working through the steps over and over again. So you can get a new text, take new notes, do your talking, do your recording and watching and correcting all over again. On a different topic would be great, because that way you will get introduced, as I mentioned before, to new vocabulary, and you can just keep practicing. Practice, practice, practice. It makes a difference as long as you follow through with the steps, as long as you look for errors and correct them. If you don't, if you just keep practicing and keep doing the same mistakes, I'm not sure that is very helpful. That's why that last step we talked about is really, really important, to check your mistakes. You can do this yourself, of course. You can look over your writing, you can listen to your recordings, watch your video. You can also get help. You can get help from friends, colleagues, relatives, other English speakers, if we're talking about the IELTS. You can, of course, always get help from someone like me, a tutor. I will leave my information below for my website, etc. So there are many places and ways that you can get assistance, but make sure that you keep practicing and make sure that you keep checking your mistakes and correcting your mistakes as you move forward. And in that way, you will continue to progress. There we go, a few self-study tips for those taking the IELTS exam, or really for any student. They're very useful self-study tips that you can use in many situations. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Click on the notification bell, that way you'll be notified. And also, if you liked the video, please click on the like. I hope you did. That'll help me out, and I appreciate it very much. Also, I will put some links below this video if you're watching on YouTube. And don't forget to make a comment. Tell us where you like to look for reading texts or stories, things of that nature. What kinds of sites do you use? Also, you can inquire about my literature courses. I use Common Lit for those, so that might be very helpful for you as well. You can always email me. I'll put a link to the website below. In the meantime, keep learning and keep having fun. It's Ron Johnson from L.T.L Tutoring Central, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye for now.